I'm going to call to order the Town of Old Saybrook Zoning Commission meeting, our regular Monday, January 5th, 2026, 7 p.m. in Town Hall first floor conference room at 302 Main Street, Old Saybrook. Roll call, Mark Caldarella, Chair, John Henry, Laura Gray, Robin Kelly, I got that right? And Derek Kennedy are in attendance for 5 regular members. And Brenda is absent this evening and Casey is expected at some point. We also have I'm sorry, and Mike, sorry, Mike. Sure. Our recording clerk, Joanne Galley, as well as our CEO officer, Chris Costa, and we have 1 in the audience and 3 online. I'm also, at this point, I'm going to make a motion to amend the agenda to add the item that I'd like to see us start with Pledge of Allegiance going forward. So I'm adding that to the agenda. Is there, I'll make the motion that we add that to our meetings coming up, seconded by Laura Gray. Any discussion? Not hearing any, passes 5-0-0. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to regular business, we have our minutes from our last meeting, which was Monday, December 1st, 2025. Is there a motion to approve? So made by Derek Kennedy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Laura Gray. Any discussion, any changes, additions, or deletions? I didn't see any. Therefore, we move on to a vote. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstains, passes 5-0-0. Thank you. Correspondence, we don't have anything other than what's on the agenda tonight. We did receive, I'll pass around a Chris holiday card from Jacobson and Associates that they sent to the zoning commission. So I'll pass that around. Moving on to section 4, public hearings. A, accessory apartments petition to amend the zoning regulation, section 53, special standards for accessory apartments to eliminate the 12,500 square foot lot size requirement, allow for non-conforming structures constructed prior to January 1st, 1944 that are non-conforming to bulk regulations to be used as accessory apartments, and modify section 11.7 prohibition accessory dwelling units detached to remove lot size requirement and prohibit variances of bulk standards. Petitioner is Frank Comas, if I pronounced that correctly. Agent is attorney Ed Casella. Our action is to open the public hearing and continue or close by February 2nd, 2026, and no later than February 8th of 2026. Attorney Casella. Oops.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm attorney Ed Casella, representing Frank and Kathy Lucomas, who made this application. Welcome to the new members. So this is an interesting application for the new members. So this is an amendment, proposed amendment to the zoning regulations regarding accessory apartments. And it essentially is seeking to accomplish 2 main things and then a few minor things. The first main thing is right now, accessory apartments are only allowed in town on lots that have a minimum of 12,500 square feet. And we're seeking to eliminate that, that number. And then secondly, to allow accessory apartments in non-conforming buildings, provided that those buildings can be proven to have been in existence before January 1, 1944. And I'll get into a little bit more detail of those things. But I think one important thing to say is this is a collaborative effort. So Chris I think was starting parts of this amendment. And then I had a client who is seeking to push it over the goal line with some modifications. So we can kind of talk a little bit about some of the changes and who's responsible for what. My client owns a property that's almost 11,000 square feet on Clinton Avenue. And they have a small house, 700 square foot house on the back of the property. And what they're looking to do, just to be frank, is construct a house that fully conforms with the zoning regulations and then retain the 720 square foot house as an accessory apartment. So that's the reason for this amendment. And as I said, right now, there's a restriction where properties that are less than 12,500 square feet, even if it can fit an accessory apartment, can't have accessory apartments. And so that, eliminates a lot of properties that are 10,000, 8,000 square foot properties that are large enough to meet setbacks, to meet coverage, to meet gross floor area and all of that. And there could be additional accessory apartments in town. What is always going to control and is a limit on a lot of development is septic. So septic will obviously remain overriding if you want to put an accessory apartment, whether it's attached in the main house or detached as part of a separate building, like above a garage or in a separate building. You have to make sure that you can prove that septic will work beyond what the zoning commission looks at. But from my experience, that's like really the main criteria when folks are looking to develop lots. Yeah, can you meet the regulations, coverage, setbacks, gross floor area? But most importantly, can you fit the septic that's required? Does it need to be upgraded? There's a whole process for that. So part of this amendment is by eliminating the 12,500 square feet, you're really then looking to the health code and determining, all right, is the property big enough to be able to fit a compliant septic? So we went to the planning commission and they did issue a finding of consistency with the plan of conservation and development, which I think should be in the record. And I think you're all aware that there's a very big push for housing in the state. So we think that this application to lessen the restrictions, especially the 12,500 square foot restriction, supports encouraging ways to promote additional housing in Old Saybrook. And it's, accessory apartments fit a lot of bills. It's housing for elderly, housing for old people. It allows for transitions. One thing that's important, your existing accessory apartment regulation has a lot of safeguards to make sure that accessory apartments aren't being abused. None of those are changing. So for example, in order to have an accessory apartment, the owner has to live in one of the two units. So you're not just giving people two units to be able to use as quote a multifamily. So it has to, the owner has to reside in one of the two. Accessory apartments in the regulation not changing, can't be rented for less than 30 days. So this regulation doesn't allow for somebody to put an apartment above their garage and then rent it out on Airbnb for less than 30 days. So short-term rentals are not feasible. And we talk about allowing non-conforming structures to be have accessory apartments. One provision that's in here is if you want to have an accessory apartment in a structure, you can't expand it. So that structure has to have been there, it has to have existed, and you can't make it more non-conforming. If it's on the property line and you want to add a little bit that's in a conforming location, you can do that. But if it's over the setback, you can't add a second floor, which would then encroach on your neighbor's property. So that it's a building that's basically, from a setback perspective, has always been there, has to remain the same to the extent it violates setbacks. There remains a prohibition in section 11. There remains a prohibition on getting variances for bulk standards, setbacks, coverage, gross floor area are expressly permitted. So all of those safeguards that are currently in your regs are staying. So why 1944 is a question. The reason right now, there's a comparable regulation on the books in Old Saybrook, which is you can convert an existing dwelling to a two-family, not an accessory apartment, but a two-family dwelling, if that building has been in existence since before 1944. So when Chris and I met and said, all right, what's a good cutoff for this, for non-conforming buildings, we adopted the 1944 because that's already in the regs and kind of a similar application. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The planning commission had a comment. I just wanted to address it, and then we can kind of go through some of the specifics. They had a comment that section F, it says second line, the language be changed from accessory apartment to just apartment. So if you take a look at the draft that's here, I can show you what they were talking about. Section F, and I think this is part of the comments that Chris made, but the accessory apartment will be provided with a kitchen, full bathroom, including indoor shower and indoor bathtub, and/or indoor bathtub, separate from the facilities of the single-family principal dwelling, as well as two means of ingress and egress, period. What they're talking about is in this next sentence. It says second line. And if you read the sentence, I think you can see why. It says an accessory apartment that fails to include a full bathroom with an indoor shower and/or indoor bathtub or separate exterior door will not qualify as an accessory apartment. So it says an accessory apartment will not qualify as an accessory apartment. So it's confusing how the first accessory apartment shouldn't be those words. I think that's what they're trying to say. They say to just apartment. We had also talked at the meeting that language could be changed to, occupied space or something like that. Gross floor area, an area. But that's what they were getting at when they made that comment. I just wanted to give you that background. Like an occupied space that fails to include an indoor bathroom with a shower and a tub or a separate door will not qualify as an accessory apartment. So that for an apartment, they use the term apartment. I'm not sure that's correct either, but so that's the big picture. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Chris, you want to just state where we came, what our portion was from discussion on the commission relative to the changes we thought, please?
So we allowed for accessory apartments probably since the late 70s. Don't quiz me on it, but it was late 70s. They were always attached. There were some changes to the laws that we decided that allowed detached accessory dwelling units, and we decided to amend our regulations to allow the detached units. And we did that, and we had the 12,500 square feet, which typically, like in the Residence A districts, it's 20,000 square feet. Prior to 20,000, it was 12,500 was the lot size. Prior to the 12,500, it was 7,000, and it went back in history. And during our discussions, when we came up with the 12,500, it was to allow for some of the smaller non-conforming lots, but large enough to fit both a house that's currently on most of them and an apartment that would be detached. So when we crafted the original regulation for detached ADUs, the commission paid a lot of attention to kind of, the what could go wrong for detached. And one of the things was, well, do you really want, an apartment that's detached 1 foot from your property line in some of these non-conforming situations? So if you go back and look at the regulations, there's some prohibitions in there for bulk standards. And for gross floor and building structure coverage that the commission put in for expansion, which pretty much prohibits someone from going for a variance. So we've had a lot of success with the change in the regulation, but there were a few circumstances where people came in and they said, I have 12,400 square feet. I can put a code compliant system in. I can meet all of the zoning regulations. And the next person came in, I have a 12,000 square foot, not substantial difference, from the 12,500. The commission at the time we talked about it, we said, well, really the main thing is once you add the setbacks of the zoning, and I'm just gonna pick on the Residence A district, which is typically a 20,000 square foot lot. We have many that are 12.5, 8,000 square feet. You put 15 feet on each side, 25 from the street, 15 feet from the rear. For the structure, whether it's an attached accessory apartment or a detached, those apply. Then you go on and you put the septic system in, and the health code has distances from the tank to the structure, from the sideline, from the leaching and all of that. If someone can meet it, just, you know what I mean, within 100, 200 square feet, did it really make sense to have the 12,500? Because the health code is really going to kind of dictate when you add the zoning regulations if you can apply for a variance. So we talked about adding it to our regulation fixes. And then we're a little delayed on that because every time I get something together from you, it seems there's a new law or a new regulation we have to fix. So we never got to it. The regulation was sitting there. Attorney Casella came in and said, I'm thinking about it. And they said, well, we were thinking about it too. We didn't talk about this whole January 1944 non-conforming situation, but that's really how we got here today.
What does it mean in terms of, like, how many properties does this open up to? Get any idea? Anybody?
No. It'd be difficult to quantify that.
And Chris, why would we strike where it tells us about the 12,500 square foot? Okay, which I do, we wanted to, when served by public water, what was that language for? Why would they have put that in the lease? And now we want to strike that.
Well,
I mean, well water.
I don't think it really matters. I mean, a 12,000,
Right,
if
but
you-
I'm just trying to understand the mindset of why it was there originally.
so 12,500 square
Well,
feet
not the 12,000.
Water. Public
with
water.
public water.
Why did they?
We've had that in the regulations, I think, for years, but the one thing is, when you start adding, if you have well water
Right,
and you have a septic system, the health code dictates a radius around
Okay.
the well and around the septic. So I'm not an engineer or health code person, but at the same time, I know enough that I think it's very unlikely we're gonna get a well on a 12,500
okay,
square foot.
so that was the reason.
And it's what, 175?
75
is the well radius, and then you've got
From
it,
your own septic and everybody's
Like the
septic
septic.
around you.
Right, okay.
and then you have the lines from the health, this health code setbacks. So it's kind of a moot point. You're not gonna put a well and a septic on a.
Okay, I just, since it was there and we're striking and then
Yeah, I think
get
it's
some history.
in lot area in the regulations, like for Residence A, a conforming lot is 20,000 square feet if you're served by public water. And it's 40,000 square feet if you're not served by public water. So I think it was just something that was probably carried over from that.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I was interested in, Chris, what you were saying earlier, about what would be the minimum square footage lot size of I guess we would have to talk about a specific residential zone to make this example work, but what would be the minimum lot size with a minimum primary residence and the maximum accessory dwelling unit, the setbacks, the septic areas, what would have to be that lot size in order to potentially have a number in the regulations that say the lot size can't be less than, so that it already fixes itself instead of having someone say, well, if I'm, 1 foot on this side and 1 foot on this side, but I don't meet here, the lot size is specifically already saying it doesn't work.
So I think part of the issue is we don't live in a perfect zoning world and not every lot is a perfect square that's gonna meet the setbacks for health code purposes and zoning purposes, so when we did this, the other thing, 12,500, we just kind of referred back to because that was the lot size, the non-conforming lot size in section 11 or section 10 that was kind of the grandfathered in the residence A zone. So residence A and AA1, it's 20,000 square feet for the lot. Residence A said a non-conforming lot is 12,500 square feet. So it's kind of hard to, it's nearly impossible to kind of put it all into the perfect situation because not all lots are square. Some are on a corner, some are shaped like an L, some, are a triangle. You never know what you're gonna find out there. And the 12,500 was what we kind of went back to and said, well, that used to work back before the 20,000. And we thought, well, we'll just start there as a number to kind of put that safeguard in at the time, because we weren't really sure how it was gonna work when we started allowing the detached unit. So there's really no answer to it, and if you can think of a better way to put it, it's each lot is different.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, it sounds like. As long as, to what you said earlier, as long as all of the other bulk requirements remain intact. That allows for the lot size of whatever dimension it is. The applicant has to prove. The appropriate things, and now we're not worrying about, which seems. I'm not trying to be flip, seems arbitrary at the 12,500, I'm not saying it is, I'm just. That now we're not having to say, sorry, you're 10 square feet short, right? Is
And
that-
that's really what's happened, a matter of 100 square feet, you have a perfect layout for something and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're 100 square feet short, maybe your neighbor will sell you 100 square feet, so, you're trying to figure out a way to do it.
But they're not performing too, so they can't do that.
Exactly, then you gotta.
Does this, I'm sorry.
No,
yes.
go ahead.
Does this, your, suggestion here is combined with Chris, how does that play out in the floodplain? Are you recommending that
Yeah, I mean,
floodplains included in this?
yeah, we don't have anything, I don't think they're gonna. I don't think there's any prohibition
It
to,
says flood hazard area. It's not located in a special
Oh, I
flood
did.
hazard area.
there you go,
That's a special.
yeah, but that's a
Yeah,
special,
flood, yeah.
special flood hazard areas are the A and the, yeah. So the non-conforming structure. The non-conforming structure has to be located in the, before 1944, has to be located in the special flood hazard area.
Not,
It's not.
No.
Not located. I think this leaves open, if you had a conforming structure. And you wanted to put an accessory apartment in it, you could do that in a flood zone, if you meant resident zone,
I think it does.
it does.
yeah.
It does. We all got a copy of the, deep letter dated today. Second paragraph from, Brady Lynn. Well, we appreciate the incorporation of language specifying that accessory apartments can only be created when the existing structure is not located within a special flood hazard area, and that there can be no change or expansion to the structure which would increase nonconformity to the title wetland setbacks. So concern I would have is it's pretty clear as to his statement, but we shouldn't be putting people in a known flood area based on everything that we read. However, if let's say you come and everything else is met, but you're over the 50% rule, then you have to become conforming. So how do we handle a scenario like that? Where if it is over the 50% rule, it's a non-issue. It works itself out. Less than that, are we comfortable in placing living conditions in a flood area? There,
Under the proposed amendment under B. Can you, if you eliminate. And then maybe Ed or Chris, you would say, no, it's not, you don't want to eliminate, you want to add more language. Could you eliminate the part where it says? And or title wetland setback? Because that's giving the approval of that with the language. If the building is there prior to January 1, 1944, but if you take out the language, does that now say? Does the non-language prohibit it, or do you need to put in language to prohibit it?
So I think the question is, if I have a 12,000 square foot lot in a flood zone, can I have an accessory apartment above my garage? That's going to be elevated above FEMA, which any work, that's where the question is gonna come up.
Right.
It's not gonna be the renovations to the house.
no, but it could.
Well,
Yeah, but then you're gonna be bound by the
That it would
50%.
be, yeah, but let's
Yeah.
use the example of your customer
Yeah,
that your client that you mentioned earlier, and just assume for a moment that it's in a
Yeah.
floodplain, okay?
Yeah.
That's a detached arrangement, right? There's improvements to make to the existing structure. If it goes above the 50% rule, then it has to elevate. But if it doesn't, it stays there, are we placing individuals in harm's way?
you probably wouldn't, because in order, say you have a garage that doesn't meet the setbacks. In order to put a kitchen, a bathroom and finish it to make it into an apartment in a flood zone, you'd hit the 50%. And I think the way I'm reading this, it would allow them to elevate the structure for flood compliance.
Right.
Is that what you intended, Ed? This is, I guess, where we're getting a little,
yeah, no, I think my point was. If you have a non-conforming structure. And it's in a flood zone, you can't have an apartment there. That was the intention. If you have a non-conforming structure. As to setbacks or anything, and it's in a flood zone, even if it's built before 1944, you can't have a accessory apartment in it, okay? So that's what this, in my opinion, this language says, but you guys are raising a whole nother question, which is an interesting one. And I don't know if you wanna talk about that question before we get to the other one, but the next question is, all right. I have a conforming structure. And again, I think a garage in my backyard, but I'm in Chalker Beach. It's in the middle. I can meet all the setbacks, but all of Chalker Beach is in the flood zone, right? Even if you're up near Route 1. Can I have an access, is just that what DEP is asking, and you guys have to figure out, doesn't affect my client. Can I get an accessory apartment in the flood zone? This regulation right now doesn't say that you can't.
you can.
You can.
Yeah,
The way it's written is you can.
you can, exactly.
So you-
So that's the big, that's the
concern.
exactly. That's a big policy question for you. I mean, a lot of Old Saybrook's in the flood zone, so, a lot of the improvement would need to be FEMA compliant.
Right.
So maybe you could build in language that, look at, even if it doesn't meet the 50% rules, you have to make it FEMA compliant. So then,
We could do that. If it
yeah,
force them to be compliant if they don't have to be. I don't think-
Most likely they're gonna hit the 50% no matter what.
yeah, but worst case scenario.
Yeah, no, I mean, it
Yeah.
is.
I understand where you're coming from. So that's an interesting
Yeah, you're
question.
gonna take a $30,000 garage and
Yeah.
convert it and put a new kitchen in, I mean, you're
Bathroom,
getting 50%.
Yeah.
Kitchen, bathroom, sheet rock.
But some people have situations where it's like not quite an apartment yet, but it's like, you know, like they have a
Bathhouse.
studio or
Yeah.
something, or a pool house or something like that. Could that become an issue where like the cost to then put in your kitchen
Well,
fixtures or something is
They would have to meet all the bulk
gonna meet the
requirements.
50%?
No, the bulk requirements.
Right,
first.
but I'm saying, say it did,
Oh, okay.
and it's in, I'm saying, I'm just talking about in terms of meeting the 50%, like those situations where it's a building, like a finished building, not like somebody's
Okay.
old, you know, 75-year-old garage. Could there be a situation where you could make it a full apartment without hitting the 50%?
Possible.
That's
Yeah.
possible.
That's the big flat picture question of, should there be just a prohibition? In my opinion, I don't think you should do that, a prohibition. Look at if somebody can make, you know, if they have a property that's in the A zone. I know DEP doesn't want people to expand, but this is Old Saybrook's bread and butter. Are those low-lying properties?
Well, that's what most of the towns made up,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
exactly.
But
A lot of
I think
residents
it, I think it is a discussion that needs to take place
Yeah,
to do the right thing.
Well, an accessory apartment can also be attached,
right.
Right.
so, you know,
You would be saying, even, you can't have it, if you put a prohibition on flood zones, you'd be saying, yeah, your house is in a flood zone, but if you wanna make this 700 square foot area over here on the second floor, you couldn't do that because the property's in a flood zone. That's why, to me, it doesn't make sense,
No, and it wouldn't, it doesn't make sense in that scenario.
right?
well, I mean, the one thing I do have to say, since we've opened this up with the detached. Is that people come in and they go, hi, I'm gonna put. An area over my garage for a workout room. And in my workout room, I need a full bathroom because I'm gonna need to take a shower. And then, you know what I'm saying? You kind of see where it's evolving. And then I go, oh, you know, you can put an apartment there. They go, oh, I can. So it's better we, you know, we know where people are and where they're living and make them legitimate versus having people living in areas that are finished over garages that don't meet the standards. And that's part of the reason where I added this language, a full indoor bathroom, an indoor shower. So because people come in and like, oh, well, the shower is outside. Well, you know, that's not, you know, that's a pool house. Right.
Jared, did you have a question?
Yeah, two questions, three questions. One is, how often are the flood zones determined?
So, we're actually due for another flood mapping change, but there's been some government delays. So our maps were last changed, when I started, we had maps from the 70s and the 90s. And then they changed in 2008, 2012, 2013. We're due for a change. I don't think we're gonna eliminate flood zones, we'll have more flood zones.
Right.
But I expect, they're saying that's in the next year, so we'll say 5 years.
Well, in general, that's my point is, as long as any language. If, you know, pro and con for the language and for the residents, right, is. As long as the language stays with just saying flood plain or, you know, flood zones. But at the same time, somebody could be conforming now and then when the next map comes out there, they'd be non-conforming, right? So just wondering about that. Ed, you had said earlier that the primary owner must live in one of the units, right?
Right.
I know this is gonna sound silly. But I think you'll appreciate this more than anybody. What does live in mean? And what is the duration of that? And it's just basically going back to that conversation of. How are the units being supervised and what is the duration of people who care on the property? And I know I'm digging into a detail right here, but just interested in what live-in means. Is it, you know,
Yeah.
6 months plus a day? Is that, you know, like, are we Florida rules?
You want, you know?
Yeah,
So,
why don't we
I
have
think
Chris
it's
start
very
with
good.
this one,
So-
because he deals with it, okay, yeah.
so any year ending in 0 or 5, you have to bring your accessory apartment in for a renewal. We used to do it every year. And you would say that you still live on the premises. And over the years, we caught people who were running to the motor vehicle department with a change of address where the driver's license was warm from, from the machine. But so what'll happen is they need to prove that they live here and we don't really say if they live here seasonally or all year round. But they have to be an Old Saybrook resident. So if they go, you know what I mean, and we don't monitor if they go to Florida for 4 months, but Old Saybrook
Okay.
owner, resident. The few cases that I've had where people had some issues, you know, we check the voter registration and so forth to make sure. And then once a year was just too much because people don't sell their house, so we just did it every 5 years. And that's also a way for us to track those that have become abandoned. So I have a house, I have an accessory apartment, my friend Joanne lives there, and then I sell the house. And the next person says, sorry, Joanne, we want the room. So that's how we track it.
Okay. Do you find that that is a good enough? Or should I say,
It works,
that, okay,
it works.
and then, the third question I had was just about the section 11. In the last page was keeping in the, well, there's the first sentence, there's the title. And then in the, I guess that first paragraph, where we're still keeping the 12,500, that is specific to when we're going to have either there's more potential for density on the property. That's why we're keeping the 12,500.
No, we're taking the 12,500 out, so
And then we're keeping it with the 2 single family on 2 lots of less than. But still, so
Right.
can we just describe that for me, please?
let me just read it. Okay, so what that means is that I come in and I get an accessory apartment. And I meet all the requirements. And then I say, gee, what if I split off this detached apartment onto another lot and I go get a variance and split it off so it's another house? So you potentially end up with another building lot. That's why that's in, but that's kind of a good point. The division law is.
That was my interpretation of it. You can't take this lot with 2 units on it and make it 2 individuals.
Shouldn't it just be that it has to, both lots have to comply with the minimum lot size for the zone that they're in?
Yeah.
If we're taking out the 12,500 anyhow?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that would stand anyhow.
Right. So maybe it should just say on less than the minimum lot size allowed in the district.
Yeah, or that you can't get a variance for that, right? That was the idea.
So put the minimum lot size permitted in the underlying. Or. On 2 lots of less than the minimum lot size permitted in the underlying, in the zoning district. Yeah, that was one of the fears, was you have a lot of 12.5, then you end up with 2 6,000 square foot lots kind of going backwards from what we've tried to do in the non-conforming neighborhoods.
I have a question. One of the previous meetings you mentioned some of the beach communities have garages that are right up on the property line. So they're not meeting the setbacks, and they're not conforming, but can they go up? If they meet all the other bulk, what would they call bulk standards, even though
They wouldn't be
the
able to.
unit would be right on the property line?
They wouldn't be able to because of the prohibition for
Because
the
of the what?
variance.
There'd be an increase in.
Yeah, you can't expand them. You can't expand the non-conforming structures
Oh,
to
I
make them
see.
bigger.
Okay,
So that's a
Right.
nice, that's a protection.
okay, okay.
And that was the fear you have, I think initially when we were talking about it, there's, you know, you have these really dense lots where you really wouldn't be able to meet the regulations and meet the septic requirements, but if the garage, it's gonna be an apartment is a foot away from the line and the neighbor has one a foot away from the line, then the next thing you know, you've got this density
Right.
increase in two families living 2 feet away from each other.
Right.
But to that point, you could, if you each that was kind of the question, one of the questions or possible concerns I had. I'm sort of of two minds about it, but, you could, as proposed, not currently, but as proposed, if you have a garage that's 1 foot from the property line, you could turn what exists of that garage into an accessory apartment. And so could the person that is also, I mean, I guess if you both want to do it, you're both 1 foot away, but my point being, like, you might have a neighbor that has a garage 1 foot from the property line and it's a garage and it's like, okay, it's a garage, they park their cars there, whatever. Now they can convert it into an apartment and now I have an apartment 1 foot from my property line.
Without increasing the
Right.
size.
I mean, that's really what this is proposing to do. Outside of the 12,500, I have concern about. But I don't know if that's something we've talked about or the commission has talked about before, or if that presents a concern for people or not. I mean,
The only caveat is, in order to do that, that garage has to have been in existence before 1944.
Right.
So that,
right,
but if you have an old garage before 1944.
right, and if it's old
Right.
and like half falling down, it's
Yeah.
still a non-conforming
Yeah.
structure that you could fix and turn into.
But it kind of fixes the loophole. You know, I don't know if it's a loophole, but it kind of addresses something that's not addressed in this situation. Or it's identifying something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Might be.
Question, so in the recommended additional language under B, the last sentence, just the first part of it. You know, as long as the non-conforming structure was in existence on, I guess to this point as well, is there a requirement of what the existence of a structure had to be? My theory being, if somebody has it's best to make examples with hyperbole, right? So if somebody has a doghouse that then got converted into a tool shed, that then got converted into a garage, and that was all here since, 1935, are they gonna say that this was a structure that was here, even though it didn't get converted into a tool shed until 1945? I'm just wondering what constitutes a structure that was in existence, I just imagine what the lengths people are gonna go to try to get something. And that's my question.
So I guess they'd have to make that argument to me. And
Man,
if it was a birdhouse, I don't think it's gonna work.
you're looking for proof.
Right. But that's really what that person would have to do. They would have to come in and, show that structure was a non-conforming, the birdhouse that became a doghouse, that became
Tool shed.
tool shed.
That's on, yeah.
Can we say something like that the structure existed like the portion of the structure that existed prior, because I think you're saying like, what if they kept expanding and expanding, right? But you would say
But they-
it's only up to what was there in nineteen
But if they
forty-four.
kept expanding up to 44, it doesn't
Right,
matter.
and then after that, it would be
Doesn't
like,
matter.
that doesn't count.
So whatever it was by that date.
And it's gonna be
It is.
hard to prove what happened
Yeah.
by 1944. Because sometimes it's hard to prove things there, or there in 1950 at this point, never mind 1944.
No, just wanted.
No, it's a good, they're good questions.
Yeah, I just wanna know, what's the argument against either removing the date or making the date like the year 2000? Why would you?
Why was the choice?
Yeah, why would you not do it? Yeah,
So I think
because I
that,
think one of the I don't have all my paperwork with me, but one of the comments was you might wanna consider taking out the date requirement.
yeah, that allows, I think first of all, we put it in there to try to help the commission understand that there's not gonna be a flood of people who are trying to put apartments 1 foot from the property line, right? Because we knew that was gonna be a concern. So 1944 is there's not going to be a lot of structures. If you said 1990, there's been a lot of garages built
Yeah.
between 1960 and the end of the 80s, right? There's a lot of stuff built. So a lot of people would be able to fall under that. So you probably have a lot more accessory apartments in non-conforming structures.
Yeah.
Which I
The
think,
44 just said so long
Yeah.
ago.
And from a zoning standpoint, either we think it's okay or we don't, like,
yeah,
I mean, whether it was built 5 years ago or 100 years ago, like. If we're saying it's okay, why do we care when the building was built? Like, if we think it's okay to make a building that's 1 foot from the property line. An accessory apartment, then like, either we think it's okay or we don't.
understood. It's just a question of scale.
Right, but that's not really. How
mean-
zoning typically.
But you're looking at it, you have setbacks for structures.
Right.
You're taking a structure that doesn't meet the setback, it's a foot away from the line, and the next one a foot away from the line.
Correct.
So you're gonna think about light, space, air, and do you wanna be sleeping in your apartment, have the other folks 5 feet away and privacy?
Right.
But you open it up, there's so many non-conforming structures, I don't have a count.
But then why would we allow it if it was before 1944? Like, what's better about being before 1944?
Because
Other,
it has a
it's
client with a house.
discriminatory. Yeah, it's
In
for one
1940.
client. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe
It's
more than
not,
one.
not really. an
No, there'll
appropriate-
be more than one, but the likelihood, it's not like we're gonna have, you know, in Ed's example. The people
Right.
from 1916 and
zoning-
1989, we will have a flood of
But
applicants.
zoning is public health, safety and welfare, and either we think it's healthy, safe and well for the community, or we don't.
And the rationale, and truthfully, came from your regulations where you said, hey, if you have a structure that was built before 1944, you can put 2 families in it. But you can't do that in other properties. So that, you know, there's a parallel there that's already on your books.
But when was that?
I think that's a
law
little bit
made?
different.
You know, I mean, it seems like it should match.
And that,
Late 70s,
Yeah, 80s, fine.
late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can kind of see some justification to that too. I mean, you have a lot of older structures that are 6,000 square feet, you know what I mean? When you had bigger homes, you know what I mean? Just get a historic home.
I thought it was 1944 selected because that was before we had regulations.
Yeah, it was. And then Ed wanted to come up with a date and I said, well, just keep it consistent with a number we all know,
Yeah,
other than May 4th, 1992.
Well,
yeah.
I would love to see the ability for more people to create duplexes from their existing home, even if it was built after 1944. I think that would also help with the housing inventory in town.
But it's kind of a different,
Yeah,
Right.
that's 2 family.
that's the 2-family discussion.
I know.
The difference between the 2-family and the accessory apartment is the 2-family doesn't have those protections. Short-term rental, owner occupied, you know, if you built a duplex, you can rent 2, bang.
Right.
So then
No,
it
it's a
becomes,
different
then it becomes
discussion.
more multi,
Right.
so I don't know.
Yeah.
This,
It would help though, so
It-
there's a lot
no,
of big
listen,
houses with
yeah, that's
one
another,
person in them.
that's
I know,
another topic.
another discussion.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the overwhelming part of this discussion would be better under item 5 on the agenda. But going back to the date question, I mean, if knowing that it's part of trying to find a date where the regulations didn't exist is one thing, but to the point of either it's fairly black and white. It's an either we do like it or we don't, understanding the reasoning for it and also understanding that there's an applicant who wants this to happen, or, you know, that's the reason why you have these discussions. But to your point, which I agree with, is, you know, when is there a big difference between having a singular date in a regulation versus carving out a piece of property and saying, we like Burger King here, but we don't like it here? It's like,
But you're not, I mean, we're not putting specific property.
no, I understand.
There could be 500 properties that, and, you know, we don't know about, that people are gonna come flocking in, we
Agreed.
don't know. So I
Agreed.
wouldn't say it's
I understand.
discriminatory or spot zoning, because we don't really know the ramifications of it. And I think a lot of times too, even with, when the detached units went in and the 12,500 went in, sometimes it's a starting place. And you go through and you have protections in, and here we are saying, okay, well, if it's 12,200, and here we are 5 years later and it's worked, then we talk about it again. It doesn't mean, you know, in 6 months, we could say it's a problem, or next week and write something different. So sometimes the numbers may be, like you said, a little bit arbitrary, but at the same time, we amend our regulations almost once a year to deal with situations like this, saying, you know, we wrote this and, you know, maybe we need to revisit it because I've seen this problem.
Well, also, like, in the beginning, there's the whole reason for this is you want to encourage housing. So it would seem like if you move the date to 1960 or something, you're creating more housing.
Potentially,
Yeah,
potentially, doesn't mean that it's going to happen, the availability of it to do that presents itself.
yeah.
Right.
No, but if the underlying purpose is to encourage housing, I would think you word the regulation to allow more housing. 44 just seems like, it just seems like you picked 44 for some reasons, but also when you picked 44, it was the late 70s. I mean, that's 30 years. I mean, now it's, you know, it just doesn't seem like there's gonna be a lot of structures that are.
Propose.
I kind of like either we like this idea or we don't. I kind of like the idea of no date, or something else arbitrary. 44 is arbitrary, go to 2000 and then see if there's a big groundswell of application, then you stop it. But maybe if you do 2000, then you.
If we were gonna
always
pick a
move
date
up.
like that, I think we need to study it, because I can think of in my 25 years here, how many houses went to the ZBA and garages that are 3 feet from the property line. I mean, we go to some of these, you know what I mean? You know, now you're kind of really opening up a can of worms.
1970.
But then why are we changing our regulations just to accommodate one particular or a handful of, if we don't think it's good? Like, if we don't think it's a good thing to happen, then why are we changing the regulations
I
to
don't think
allow
what's
it
proposed is a
in
bad
some
thing.
places?
I think of opening it up. I mean, we kind of know from 1944 and back, there's not gonna be that many structures that are gonna fall into. If you wanted to do something and say from 2000 back, I think we'd have to research all these properties and get a better handle about how many there are and get some feedback, because if your neighbor has a garage a foot from the line, and all of a sudden you've got this going on in sheds and whatever other kind of structure, kind of to Derek's point.
But if you're the neighbor of one of these people that is pre-1944 and they convert their garage that's a foot from the property line into an accessory apartment, either we think it's okay or I still go back
Oh,
to
no,
like,
not.
like, why are these like select few okay just because there are less of them?
That's the applicant.
That's the applicant.
Yeah, that's okay.
And also, how many other non-conforming properties do you want to allow to let this happen to?
Right. Right.
All of them? I don't know.
Right, that's.
We don't know that. I mean, to me, the downside is how much exposure is this? I'm not saying we shouldn't encourage housing, I'm saying we're talking about non-conforming properties, just to let them go, or not. That's what the date does.
So what starting point?
Right, so we're starting conservatively,
Yes,
see how it goes.
Very
But I just looked something up about the Forest Glen lifetime homes that were built. That's like, off of Maple Avenue, they look like Brady Bunch ranches. They built 100 homes during that time. So that was a pretty big development.
Which is
in
when?
Saybrook.
7,
Um,
66.
yeah, I have to look at the pictures and see when these were built. I think it's 50s and 60s. But anyway, that's a lot of homes. So if we extended out to 50s or 60s to include these places, that would really increase the number of, potential.
Plus, you'd have to go back and look at the previous regulations and go through and say, okay, well, when the lot size was 5,000 square feet and it was only 3 feet from the line for the structure for your garage. And when I started, there were regulations that talked about like a horse and wagon. You know, they were still kind of kicking around in the regulations, that's where you need to do more research to open it up that broadly because you don't know what you're opening up. I think Ed's choice in the number 1944, how many people had, and maybe they had barns, but how many people really had garages for cars and so forth back then when you get into the detached units. I don't think it's an issue with the attached units, it's the detached ones that are gonna be the ones that are gonna be closest to those lots.
Could we consider, making an exception for the non-conforming structures, but still having some sort of minimum so that it's a lesser minimum, maybe it's like 5 feet or something, I mean, I don't know if that works for your client, but, so that we're protecting a little bit adjacent property owners? Or does that not make sense? I don't know what the
Or would
commission
we be
thinks
better
about
off
that.
staying with what we have?
What's that?
Or would we be better off just staying with what we have?
You mean not changing it?
Not
up?
Changing it all.
We're changing it and removing the 1944 language.
But I feel like that's, we're gonna have several options to talk about and decide on, and is one of them keeping, what if just an option to think about, I think I need to hear a discussion on it, but what if you just either reduce, I'm sure eliminating is not a great idea, but reducing the existing square footage requirements, the lot size requirements, reducing it. Because that seemed to be the start of the concern. Was people coming in, a little bit of this, a little bit, we're just a little short, but it's different dimensions. This applicant clearly is worrying about a structure that is of a certain time, but we're trying to amend and help, work with a proposed amendment at the same time.
Well, we're here to review and decide or not decide based on the applicant's on accessory apartment as written.
Right.
So if we feel we need to study more or there's elements of it that we need to modify, we can vote it down and ask for a more the word I'm searching for, but an application is, to your point, Robin, that isn't date specific. Okay, but I would not this evening be able to feel prepared to be able to vote on that, only because I don't know what that means. I don't know what that exposure would be.
Yeah.
Not that we're,
No, no, I
not,
understand the issue that,
So-
that, so open the floodgates, I'm happy starting with 44, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two parts to it. I think overall, and I know we have different members on the commission, the 12,500 removal was a discussion we probably had
Wow.
for a while, early summer, whatever, granted, it's a different commission. The text here is what we discussed with the exception of Ed's text that he's added from the 1940.
which the zoning commission is.
Can your software do a numerical calculation of detached units in town?
We can, but we don't know how far they are from the lots.
How about, can we find out how many houses were built in the fifties and sixties?
All right, I'm gonna give you an example, our conversion ordinance, I think I've maybe seen 2 in 25 years. How many have you seen, Ed? You've been,
What does that mean, conversion?
The
the two-family conversion?
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna open the
house
floodgates
at
with
Banbury.
1944. I mean, if you wanted to go with the 1944 and you wanna go through and take some time and research it more, you could do that. You can deny it, you can approve the removal of the 12.5 and not the 1944. I mean, I think there's some things you can salvage out of this, if the 1944.
Well, you just indicated that you have a better understanding.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm happy starting with 44, yeah.
Yeah.
I just was, that's
Yeah,
what
sure.
I asked, what was
But-
the argument against
Right.
it? Yeah.
And as we have done, I think at this point, I'm probably most senior being on here for the 10 years or 12 years that I've been on it. We always go back
Yeah.
and look at it based on what we learned to modify and change it. If we see, hey, it should be 1960 or whatever, we'll do that. I mean, obviously, the intent here is specific, but it's a review to see whether or not we can provide this so that we can increase housing in town, and that's a good thing. And that's something the zoning commission has always wanted to be and do and open-minded about. And it's a start. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not a, it's not gonna solve all the
it's
issues.
not written in stone.
Exactly,
I think it's a good start. I would like to
so,
start there at least.
Yeah.
The public hearing too.
yeah, no, I know,
I'm just wondering, and that's the historian me, I know after the hurricane of 38, a lot of these houses were built. How many were built? It's mostly the beach community houses. And then this big development happened, and I just checked, it was the fifties and sixties, they built all this housing for people who were working at the sub base. And electric boat.
Donald.
Yeah, but that's the next big
Yeah.
development in town, but to start at 44 is what works for me, so that will be applied to.
any other questions for commissioners at this point? No?
Can I just ask one more
Sure.
question? So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that section E still applies, right, in terms of the size?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
1,000 square feet and the
Yeah.
third, so that doesn't change, okay. So if you have like some huge, you're not like huge barn, you're not gonna end up with, okay,
Yeah, and if you have a 1,600 square foot house, you only get 1/3 of that,
yeah, okay.
so it's. You don't even get 1,000.
Right.
What was the 50% rule? Cause now that I'm reading this again, I thought that was the 50% rule.
That's the flood zone.
Yeah.
You can only spend up to 50% in improving structure if it's not FEMA compliant
Okay.
before you have to
Go on.
go
Okay,
up.
got it.
So if you're
I remember.
thinking about taking a garage and adding bathrooms and kitchens, you're gonna be over 50%.
Right.
If you have a bathhouse or
So
pool
they'll
house,
want you to go up.
you might not.
Right. Since this is a public hearing, open it up to any questions. Obviously, there's no one in the audience. If anyone online has a question, if you'd raise your hand, please do so now. Okay, I don't see anybody at this point. We do have some correspondence that everyone have in in our package, we, received, Connecticut River Gateway Commission, which was, in support. Lower Connecticut River Valley Council of Government, also, showed their support with Connecticut, or Deep, also showed theirs. And then we have the, planning commission's comment. My only comment, well, let me read their comments. The planning commission would like section F, section word of section 53, apartment accessory change from accessory apartment to just apartment. I feel that based on what the applicant has provided and the discussion that we've had here tonight, that we leave that accessory apartment defined that way. It's also called out in item B and as well, rather than apartment, because I think that could lead to some confusion going forward. So we'll, I would recommend that we leave it as written.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. And that is it. So at this point, we can, if we're prepared to, or you think we need more time, we can entertain the closed public hearing. I'll make that motion that we close the public hearing for accessory apartments petition to amend the zoning regulations as written on our agenda.
Second.
You second, John?
One
Second.
quick piece of housekeeping, we did send
Sure.
referrals out in November, so we've got our statutory requirements for sending out referrals, and the other folks who've not responded, I don't expect them to at this point.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion of closing public hearing? Not hearing any, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of closing public hearing indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstained. Public hearing is now closed. That means that it is up to the regular 5 commission members going forward. Do we feel we have enough information in front of us based on the conversation to deliberate tonight on this application, or do we need more time?
Okay.
You're okay?
I'm okay.
You're okay? Derek? Derek? Oh, you're thinking, sorry.
I think I'm good.
Okay. So I'll make I'll need some help on this because we have a couple of things that I think we have to add for this. Motion to. Remember? We didn't amend anything, did we?
How do we keep that language?
If you keep that section, oh, we did actually, I will, yeah, we did add, we amended section 11.
Section 11 prohibition.
Right.
So, I'll make a motion, to approve accessory apartments petition to amend the zoning regulations, section 53. Special standards for accessory apartments to eliminate the 12,500 square foot lot size requirement. Allow for non-conforming structures constructed prior to January 1st, 1944 that are non-conforming to bulk regulations to be used as an accessory apartment and modification. Section 11.7 prohibition accessory dwelling units detached to remove lot size requirement and prohibit variances of bulk standards with the following condition. Is it a condition?
With the amendments noted tonight, particularly section 11.7, where the last line, we were gonna remove of less than 12,500 and change that to of less than the minimum lot size permitted in the district is expressly prohibited.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by John Henry. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing any at this point, we'll move on to a vote. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstains? Derek, did you, okay, it passes 5-0.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And the effective date, February 1st, work? And the effective date will be.
February 1st.
So they have this off of Maple.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, around.
Several times. Yeah, that was the first beach thing.
Yeah,
It was
Southfield.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, they didn't need a road to get there. I mean, it was already there.
I think,
I like your work on the economy.
I think that the discussion that we just had was very good amongst ourselves and good dialogue, so.
I got
Thank
more
you.
if you guys want.
No, you can go home now.
We can keep coming.
Section 5, workshop, discuss possible regulation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Just
So we talked about this, at a previous meeting. I do have a little bit more research. We talked about there was some gateway conservation zone. There's a little issue with the trees. We have to update our coastal site plan language to, and I'm waiting for some feedback, so I probably put it on the agenda too quickly, so if we could continue till I get that feedback,
Sure.
that would be terrific.
perfect. Can I bring up the other, we're done to start time? I discussed with Chris, that I think like to see us start a zoning meeting an hour earlier at 6 o'clock versus 7 o'clock. I know that other, commissions and boards like ZBA has started earlier. We polled, some of the, people such as Ed Casella and engineers and stuff, and they like that very much. So I wanted to get a feedback from everyone here in the room as to what your thoughts were relative to an earlier start.
I like it. That's retired folks, we're okay.
You okay? Casey, how does it work for you?
That's great for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Good. Sure,
No problem.
Mike?
No.
Okay.
Start at 5?
Yeah, start at 5. No, I don't think so. We have to set a start date for that. We have to
Well,
put a
if you
notice
think,
out.
so the first thing is that, we do have some public hearings that were scheduled and advertised with a 7 o'clock start time. I believe,
Or we leave those as is.
so that would be
We have those for the next meeting, I believe.
in the next, so you gotta remember, we have these 35-day
Yeah,
referrals now. So maybe.
No, maybe something like April.
March. So if you made a motion to amend the annual calendar for a start time of 6 o'clock,
Starting first meeting in April.
beginning in February, unless there's been something advertised sooner. I think February we're clear.
Should be the first meeting or second?
How do we do the second?
Second meeting in
Just
February?
Give us,
Okay,
I think that gives us plenty of.
Okay.
so moved is the motion. It needs a second.
Second.
Second by Rob. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstains, passes 5-0. Thank you. Chris, do we have any further committee representative and staff?
Sure, so I did talk to Attorney Casella. We do have a few enforcement matters that he's handling. And he will be getting those in with special permits and so forth. He said this month. I know we've been waiting for a little while. So hopefully we will get those in. I did send you an email that he was at the 9-19 King Street, was served. That's a dog grooming business or converted to an illegal 2-family. Fenwick Ice Cream was brought up. We did reach out to them for some time ago to see if they could come in to talk about banners and trailers and things like that. I believe they're closed for the season. I did send an email. I haven't heard anything. I gave them 2 dates. I can follow up on that for you.
Please.
The one thing most of you, I think, are aware that, we applied for a grant with the Department of Housing to study the B1 and portions of the B2 district. That is underway. The department, we've scanned, all of the parking and septic files and soils data files for all of the properties in that area. We sent them to our consultants. We've started the soils analysis on that. We had parking counters out on December 4th. I think the 4th, 5th, and the 6th, or maybe it was just the 4th and the 6th, and we started interviewing property owners. This was for our new members to talk about why our mixed-use apartment regulations, some of the owners are not taking advantage of them, and to evaluate those regulations. So we're off to a good start on that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is the half-story definition. So. Might be able to use the whiteboard about it. I don't know. I don't think can you see over here or?
No.
Yeah.
Never, nobody ever uses them.
Well, we're talking about. Yeah.
Where is it?
I was gonna put together a memo for you, but I figured I was gonna explain it. So if you go to section 9, definition. It's under story, comma, town. Oh, I can just use this.
Go ahead.
Everybody there, story, comma, town? All right, go back one page to story. There's a little diagram on the bottom for calculating gross floor area and half story. So typically, we don't get many of them, but most of our structures kind of are easier like this one, right? So we've had some situations. So we allow for 1 story, 2 stories, the half story, that goes through, and that's anywhere where you could potentially put the knee wall. This area counts as gross floor area. This area, in order to be a half story, has to be 50% of the area below. So if this is 100 square feet, 100 square feet, this would have to be 50 square feet. Pretty simple. So the last 2 sentences, under all circumstances, a 1/2 story that equals more than 50% of the floor area immediately below. So we've had some situations where, and I'm not an architect, we've had situations where something kind of goes through on part of it, where there's a dormer area or a larger area on this part of it, but it's not 50% of the area below. So the question becomes, does that make it a 3rd story? So do we count the full 100, 100, but if there's only 50 here, does that make this 25? Did I lose you?
No, I get it.
It's like, it's it's a half story cut in half. So,
Unfortunately,
I'm not an architect.
unfortunately, I think the language is just up for interpretation. Instead of being.
Well, it's your regulation. It's up for interpretation. We've always kind of gone this way. This was brought up in the immediately below. So I made an interpretation to the ZBA. That it was that 50% is the area below. The whole 100. A member of the ZBA, who I can see the point, says, well, that's not, this part here is not immediate, so really what you've done is by allowing them to use the whole 100 and put 50, you've given them a half story through that, a third story through that interpretation.
Why does it matter? Like, what situation is there where it matters?
Well, it matters because you could have one section of the house that makes it into what it would. It's the difference between, is it a half story or a third story? So we allow for 2.5 stories. You got your 1, you got your 2. If this half story is determined to be this half, the 25, then my interpretation of all of it is the 50. And using all of it, because some of these houses, not all houses are like that. You could have a house. And I'm a bad artist. And here's your house. You could have different areas of the house. That are like that. Where this area is not counted. But you would be able to count the entire. We're gonna call this 150 on this side. So do they get 75 square feet up here? It really has to do with the proportion and the balance and does it put it into, so the immediately below. And I did speak with Bob Frieden. I said, do you remember when this happened? And he says he believes it's the 25.
You
it's
was
just
actually 25, not 50 on that second one,
yeah, so
to make it a half story.
it's only half the space.
So you mean, is it only half of the area that it's over, or is it half of the whole?
Right, so that's really.
Why is it water, sewer, or parking? Why we just don't say 3-story?
We're not getting into the, why we don't allow for 3
I'm
story.
not, that's
So
not my
we
question.
allow right now for 2.5 stories. So this, by not counting immediately below, how I interpreted it, which I can see this area here, because I allowed them to use that full 100, is not immediately below. It gave them more area up there and a bigger dormered out appearance would be considered a third story.
Am I looking at the right area, but is it where it also says and under the same roof? Is that the right area? So it has to mean both things, so. I would think that would make a difference if it's the same.
Says gross floor area.
Well, this
It
is,
says
I don't
gross
like
floor
it.
area. Right in it.
No, it doesn't.
And we can think about it. I just want you to think about it.
If it said something other than gross floor area immediately below, then I think that it makes it more interpretive, but it's pretty crystal clear. It's talking about the gross floor area
Right.
and under the same roof.
So, but here's the, like, under all circumstances, 1/2 story. That equals more than 50%
Of the floor
floor
area
area
below and
below
under the
and
same roof.
under the same roof is prohibited.
Well, It says immediately below, so
That's-
I would interpret it, I mean, that's just me, but
Mhm.
like, I would interpret it that like the reason for the word immediate,
25.
yeah. Because otherwise, why put in immediate?
Right, I,
But that's just.
On the
Right,
little, on
yeah,
the little picture, it says on this, on the story below,
and then the arrows are going all the way,
but it doesn't include the first floor, it includes the second floor.
and that was my understanding of immediately below. They're talking about the floor immediately below, so you're not worrying about the first floor, you're worrying about the second.
Second floor, yeah.
But it says, just so you know that I made that diagram and I'm not an architect, that was just a very simple. Way
Very
to show people that the little half-story areas anywhere. Where in the middle where it counts as the gross floor, where you could potentially put the knee walls when you calculate it, because we calculated. If it's finished or it's unfinished, because at some point someone inevitably finishes it, so why not count it from the get-go?
But then when you put in, you go to the dormer, so when you put in a dormer, then you gain more floor area.
Right, so like I said, but these pictures, houses don't look like this. Houses or architects design nicer houses than I can draw on this little paper. So you start getting more complex houses, so you could take, say. Let me try.
The chap. I don't know, also. Roof, I mean, what, are we talking about the roof, or are we talking if there's multiple roofs and? Right. Just the plan, right, yeah. Just be specific.
Reason why, what?
It's just, the restrictiveness of it. Understanding that
Half
first,
story? Restricting a half story?
understanding why that language is in there to begin with helps me understand how to have this conversation. I mean, if you're saying, if there's an understanding of why the language was put in the first place, then it's
Yeah.
easier to have this
Oh,
conversation.
yeah, but
I
don't
think it's
know.
to have the. Have
What's the
it so
intent?
you don't have boxy 3-story houses, you have
Okay.
some breaking them up, that makes.
I mean, it's a definition, you gotta get your arms around it somehow.
Right. That's right.
Architecture is something different.
So we don't have any 3-story houses?
Just the ones done by Ford dealer that have been there.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the only three-story
There's half
ones.
stories on, I think there's half stories on Main Street too.
Yeah, you can have a half story, yeah.
Which was,
And the other exception would be on an 830G. It doesn't pertain.
It's very bad, but. You have folks who want like that giant kind of dormer, I know, just stop making fun of me. And what they do is
I
they
think it looks
take
good.
one half of the house and put that dormer in, and the back is a flat roof.
Or a shed dormer.
Through one whole suite, right?
And then you have.
But now,
potential
instead of having your roof like this. Your roof is really like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mhm.
Or when you look at the side view, it would look like that.
Right.
Is that kind of?
We used to call it shed
Talking
dormer.
about on the
Shed-
third one?
well,
You're not allowed from third.
2.5, we.
No, but I mean, you're talking about that on the half story or on the,
Okay, all right, so you can have a half story, doesn't have to be on a two-story house. So you could have
Like a Cape Cod.
a half story. Okay, and you go that,
What if you have a walkout basement, is that
we're
considered
not
the
gonna get
first
into
story?
more.
I mean, is that
We don't have
considered the first story?
Well, no, then you have to go through the definition of basement and you have to measure around the foundation walls to find a percentage where. Joanne, we love you, but. We can talk about basements anymore. So the question is. You know, this is a half story. But you have these situations. Where. Your side view looks like this because of the dormer. Does that make sense? Yeah.
But that's,
Usually it goes out back that way. And
We can look.
Okay, but we're not
Yeah,
talking
but
about.
we're talking about house with multiple dormers and things going on, so.
is the question whether the dormer counts towards the
I mean,
floor
let me-
area of the half
I
story?
think so.
No, the question is, we're not talking about the floor area, is it a half story or not?
If it has a dormer?
Is it 50% of the area? Let me go get the file. This is probably.
I think it becomes larger than 50% of the area, the story underneath.
You include.
If you put a dormer in, because then you get more floor space.
That's different.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a third floor. Well, because it's greater than 50%.
But I thought all we were talking about is it 50% or 25%? Well, so then they can back into it however they want with the dormer.
Well,
But yeah, that's not the issue.
Picture on the
Because the
right
dormer
of-
hangs out over the other
Is it
part,
the
is that
whole-
the idea?
The whole second.
Is this the whole second story?
Or the first and second.
I like Derek's interpretation of immediately below, could mean just the entire floor below it, not the first floor. You know,
Right, it
it's
wouldn't
the second-
include the
I hadn't even thought of that as a definition for immediately, I was thinking it meant immediately below what you're trying to add on. But I kind of like the idea of immediately means you can only look at the floor directly below you and not add in the
Right.
first floor.
Whether that's
So-
second floor or first.
So I'd be leaning towards 50%
Yeah.
then.
I think that's the intention, but it's not very clear that way.
Yeah.
That's it.
But I'm saying I got thrown by immediately, because I thought immediately below meant immediately below what you're intending to build,
Oh.
and that would be 25%. But if you read immediately as
The
the
whole,
floor that happens to be immediately
Right.
below you, not the first and second floor.
But if we're allowed to interpret it that way, it would let you create part of the building as being a full, essentially a full 3 stories. Like you could have, because, and still meeting the floor area requirement, so does that fly in the face of the intent of
Right.
the
Yeah,
regulation?
then there's a design standard. you
Yeah,
have to
well,
throw in
of our-
two, and now,
Right.
right,
So everything is down to these,
The
my
front
little.
really
That's
tall.
that's right.
It's very pretty.
Yeah.
So the question
It's
is,
like every house being built.
with this. It's 50% of this area below, but it's not 50% of what's immediately
Directly
below.
Yeah. Can you hold it up again for a second?
When you say immediately below, you're saying the first and second floor.
I think
Building?
The floor below, so we're just gonna pretend.
Right.
It was a 1.5 story, you know what I'm saying, but when you look at it that way, or two. Again, it's a 2.5 story house. But
Correct.
that is not immediately. Below, that's why it's kind of hard to take that. Definition and apply it.
I think the language just needs to be tightened up, and then
It's
it's
not
exactly.
the language, it's the interpretation.
Okay.
Well, that's the language. If you make the
Well,
language.
we'd have-
Well, so we don't get any of these. So I interpreted it to be the 50, the 50 and not the 25. So going back to my very.
on half of the second floor.
See how I tried to make it look kind of funny, how
No, I
it's
got
off,
that.
now you can see it? So I said they could have the 50 was my interpretation, but because it's immediately below, the ZBA got stuck with the 25.
Yeah.
So the question is, they're your regulations. How do you want me to interpret that? Am I interpreting it incorrectly?
I don't hear,
I know that.
I think it's 50.
That's where.
But it's not immediately below.
Like I said, I like the definition of immediately, meaning the floor that is immediately below the addition you want to
You're
add.
only building on half of the 100.
Yeah,
So immediately below is 25.
no,
No,
that's what I'm saying,
no.
there's two ways to look at
Immediately
it immediately,
below.
immediately, because.
No, but you can only make 25, right? You have 100, cutting the baby in half, so you get 50% of 50, which is 25.
But you're reading immediately as
Right below the.
exactly below what you want to
Right.
add, and his definition, which I like,
Which is
is.
the whole 100.
But it is it is the floor that's immediately below what you wanna add on to, you're not, cause somebody could make the argument, take the. Flooring from the first floor and the second floor, make it 200 feet, then I get 100 feet added on, so you only get the one floor, you only get the floor that's immediately.
No, I
So the question is, so that really, if you were to cut that in half,
Right.
it has the appearance, that house in half, it looks like a
Because-
3-story house.
If it said you have the right for the floor below, they would have 50. Building it that way that you should have the set. But because it says immediately below,
It would go
they
to 25.
25. So if you want to change it to say.
So, but we're gonna stop back with changing the regulations.
So
So
it should be the.
we have the regulations as they're written.
Right.
The regulations are subject to interpretation.
Right.
So you don't have to rewrite it every time.
Right.
The question is, as it reads, are you reading this as the 25
I read it to 25.
or the 50?
Well,
You're gonna get both.
So I'm going to you as guidance as the zoning commission.
How do you, can I ask how you interpreted it?
I did it as the 50,
As the 50.
but it's not
I mean,
immediately
it's
below.
ambiguous, it is ambiguous.
Yeah.
Let you get rid of the word immediate.
No, but.
Just say the
Then make
floor
it,
below.
and make it directly
The
below,
flow
or entirety of floor.
Let's stop, we're not rewriting the regulation. We're not rewriting.
You're asking for an.
As it is right now, are we a 50 or a 25 is a house to it?
I
That's,
gave you 25.
I give you 50.
I said 25.
There you go. Now we're splitting it.
Well, no, it's not that, or just this is what we need to have the conversation, even for you to rewrite the regulation.
Now, I agree with you because of the word is below the structure. of the building.
I mean, what do you think the intent was? Do you think the intent was?
I think the intent was they should be able to.
But I stand by the interpretation of
They
our
should
zoning
have
enforcement
more
officer. Unless we modify, you know, and that we
Build
can
on-
we'll clarify in the
Build
future.
on
Yeah.
half the 100.
I think there's only like 2 of these.
Suppose this whole
Eric,
piece
just jump
here.
in.
We're-
Yeah, you can just jump in.
No, then that would be 100%. That's only, that's 50%, it'd be 100%.
Well, what would you think about that, though?
Yeah, if it did continue.
The third floor.
That's the third floor, yeah.
So wait,
I'm just saying,
interpreted
intuitively, it looks like a
that
third
they
story
get-
to me.
But
half
we're not,
of the
we're
half
not deciding
or half?
that, we're only deciding. should
They
we
get
look-
the-
should we call
I
it 50,
interpreted
should
they
we
got
call it
50.
25? We're not talking about.
At the immediately below.
I mean, it looks
so
like.
then-
Of the part that's right underneath
right here.
That's what you are talking about.
Of the part that's right under.
So
No,
I
too much,
interpreted
should I
the
use
whole,
50
so that's why I
or
put the 100 and the 100 on each
That's
thing.
what-
In terms
I
of
took
the size of this.
I took the
Yeah.
50. I didn't say,
So I'm just saying if.
You gave them the
3 hours,
smaller
maybe
amount.
it's-
A larger.
Larger.
No, she did the larger amount.
so. 100, if you use the whole 100, that's the 50, I gave them the 50.
Okay.
If I was to interpret it immediately below, that would have been
Been
25.
Right. And Bob, what was, 25?
25.
That's what I meant.
Me too. I
So,
think it has to
so my
be
challenge with that is
immediately
that
below.
it specifically says the gross floor area.
Mhm.
It does not say the approximate area of square footage underneath
You're
the
talking,
area. Oh, it does not say an estimated amount of area. It specifically says gross floor area. It's even italicized. Immediately below and, so not, or, there's no other, that is specifically also adding under the same roof. So the challenge there is if you have a building that has multiple angled roofs, okay, now we can interpret, what roof are we talking about? But in this specific, there's one roof.
Yeah, that's a good. What did you look at the other sides to it?
Oh, well now, okay, I was looking at the front. I was looking at the
That's
front.
exactly what you.
Yeah,
So,
turn the page.
so the challenge we have now is that if you have one thing that says gross floor area of the immediately below.
This is the other sides, I know you just looked, because that kind of got your
And, but
attention.
you also have an and under the same roof. The and becomes the clarifier.
So the end would probably be the 25%.
In this scenario, that's the challenge. So it's, I mean, in any other circumstance, it is the full story underneath because that's what it
I mean,
says.
we don't get these every day, but that's.
Right, that's why we have to fix it.
It's not that we have to fix it, you just have to tell me, should I be interpreting it to be immediately below? And if that's the case, the immediately below is the area immediately below, and I'm just gonna use the number 25 instead of the 50. So it would be,
We don't know what same roof means. I know that sounds ridiculous. but-
Yeah,
I think it's.
well, it's not,
that's the point.
Isn't it that you can't interpret a law to make something meaningless? And if you kept it at the 25%.
well, not
directly over-
25%,
No, no,
these are
I
just
mean,
random numbers.
Okay, if you kept it directly over the immediate area. Then it's always gonna be the same roof line. You're making that and roof line irrelevant, because if it's just directly over one part of it, it's always gonna have the same roof. It doesn't connect to anything.
Yeah,
Well,
because
that's-
if you say,
So you-
does the house have a roof? You don't say the house has multiple roofs, right?
And in this case, the house is.
No, but how could you ever not have the same roof if it's just a little portion that's over?
No, I'm
another
agreeing with
portion?
you, yeah.
I think they've designed so many different structures now. It's not like cave with the dormer.
Right.
Right.
Those pictures just show you there's eyebrow windows and.
That's right.
There's so many different things.
Kind of hard to fault the architectural designs of a roof instead of just saying roof.
Different.
But I mean, you know, we don't get these every day.
No, but you still gotta, still maintain the 35 feet.
Right.
And we still, I mean. So we don't have a definition of what a third story is.
Because we don't allow it. A third story,
Well, we should still have, maybe have a definition for that.
we don't,
We don't allow.
because if it's more than a half story, no, if it's
Okay,
more.
speed, but.
All right, put it this way, I'll tell you the definition of a half story.
Yeah.
The definition of a half story is a story, is my situation right now. I interpreted the full first floor and gave them the 50, the number 50, instead of giving them 25.
Mhm.
So if a half story is interpreted is 50% of that 100, and I gave them the 50, then I'm fine. If it should have been the area immediately below and it went to 25, the 50 is a third story. So anything more,
What did you
I-
want?
You made it a third
How did you
story.
define that?
What?
What, you just said,
well,
if you give them 50, it would be a third floor, why did you? We don't
if
have
you
a
give them
definition.
more than
Then it would be an
50% of the
upper.
floor area
It's not
below,
allowed.
it's a third floor.
Right.
Because if it's a 2.5 story house and it's not a half story and it goes more than that 50%, then it makes it a third story.
So we need to define that, even though it's not allowed, we need.
So the
purpose
thing-
of definition, we need.
With zoning is that you can't define every single thing and make it that way, because what happens is you'd have an encyclopedia set of regulations. So that's why it goes to the interpretation of the commission. We're not rewriting it.
So you're,
It's if somebody comes in with this tomorrow, am I looking at it immediately below at the 25? Or am I looking at it at?
well, you gave them the benefit of the doubt at 50.
Yeah.
Okay? Your interpretation. I think the zoning commission supports your interpretation of the half story. The question becomes, does an applicant then challenge you as CEO and wants a decision from the commission itself? Or are they looking for a?
This is approved, so there's nothing, no
I
one's
know that,
appealing
this
it.
is hypothetical. Or are they looking for more than the 50%? What's the root cause?
Well, if we were to say that this area here should have been the area immediately below, it would have been that big.
So are we just saying moving forward?
So what I'm
How
looking
does
for is the guidance from the commission. So I'm saying, I've interpreted it this way. These are your regulations. You're the owner of the regulations. I interpret them for you in the commission. Obviously, we got some different opinions. So I'm going to you for guidance on, am I interpreting it the way I should be? Or should it be, so if you look at this, I think this is kind of one way to look at it. It does look like a 3-story house. If you look at it this way, it looks like a 2-story house. What we're gonna find is we're gonna have more half stories this way when you have a view.
Right.
Right.
That's what it all.
Because that's what it comes down to, is the view. So do you want,
And that's
Well-
what, if the intent was to prevent 3 stories, right, then like.
does not the intent is to go through and prevent 3 stories. This could happen, a half story. Could also end up on a 1-story house.
But then we wouldn't really care.
Well, if someone said, is this a 2nd floor or a half story, what do I tell them?
But does our regulation care? Because is there
Someone
a
could say
prohibition
you
that
can-
says you can't have 2 stories, but you can have 1.5 stories?
What if there was? How do I
But,
interpret?
my question.
This is what I'm
But-
seeking
but
the
it-
answer
but it-
for.
Intent in restricting it to 2.5 stories.
That's separate from this one, just because she's asking on the definition of half story based on that language right there, not two and a half
So
story.
you-
Why was it defined? It's defined because there's a regulation about it.
Yeah, so you
Right.
could have. So in each section of the regulations, you could have a 3-story building, a 2-story building. A 2.5-story building. We don't have a regulation that says in this district you can only have 1.5 story. But what I'm asking you to get the answer out of story, is this a 1.5 story structure or a 2-story structure?
If it's 50% or less, then it's a half story.
Is it 50% less
Well, I mean, now,
of just the
I
area
agree with your interpretation.
immediately
I'm a
below?
gross floor area guy.
Right. Oh, no, I mean, I won't get hurt either way. I mean,
That looks
it's,
like a 2-story to me.
Yeah.
and this is.
25% the number. My mind.
So that's the whole thing, if it's supposed to have kind of an appearance of a half story. In this case, this looks 2-story, just like it came up in the ZBA, it looks like a 3-story, and if I interpret it. The whole way this way and don't do the area just immediately below. Then really I did give them a 3rd story with my interpretation.
But it's not, a 3rd story. What am I trying to say here? Yeah, 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor would be full. Square footage as the floor below, which would be a 3rd story. That's not a 3rd story.
Right, because it doesn't.
But you can
the
still
language.
walk from this area of the house to that area of the house, one way or the other.
But that's the 1st floor.
I'm saying on the 2nd floor,
So, yeah, which is allowed.
right?
So that becomes a half story.
But if we use immediately
If it's more than
below,
If it's more than
So
50%.
immediately below, here's where the confusion comes in. Immediately below, does that mean immediately below
What they
this
built on.
area?
Right.
Or immediate below is the whole?
that's
area?
That's the question.
that's the question.
So if they built all the way across in that picture,
Then that would be.
They would get- it would be-
So this now is a maximum half story on this house. Because I allow them to use the whole
they
area.
used it up, right, they can't build
Yeah.
anymore.
I interpreted it the other way, it would have been like that.
And then they could add more. A little bit.
No, they couldn't have.
But they only.
She interpreted it as 25.
If you gave.
I
But if they went to
interpreted
the
it,
other-
and like I said, these are my numbers, 100 feet, 100 feet. I interpret it to be the 50 feet.
Okay.
And say, well, it should have been the
How-
25.
How is that little space, 50% of that whole?
It's not of the whole.
It's just the second floor.
It's not that-
Well, when you look at the floor plan, yeah. Because of the roof, the roof line.
If the,
This is probably here.
just based on, Chris, just based on the language on your story. If the top part is a roof, then it's not a story. Because a story has to be between the surface of any floor and the surface of the floor or ceiling above it.
Because the two areas there,
Yeah. Well, this is a side view of this.
no, that's the other part of the house.
So they
Wait,
have
no.
two half stories. They can't have two half stories. This is the side of this,
I'm sorry.
right? And this is the 50%.
So
And
when
that's
you look at,
50, is that 50% of what
no,
here
that's
or
50,
50% a year?
that's 50% of that.
Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that interpretation.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't think there's wrong with either interpretation. I'm just saying,
Right.
what do you want me to interpret?
Well, I think your interpretation of the various ones that come in front of you are consistent with the belief of what is in the zoning commission book, and the commissioners are sitting at this table.
But if I did it immediately below,
It's kind of almost like circular logic, I mean.
welcome to
just makes-
zoning.
Because if you say it can only be 50% of what it's under, and you say, no, you get 25, then you make it longer to try and get 50, like,
Oh,
it
you
just, you
mean
can't ever
shelter.
get, you can't ever get
Shelter.
to 50 under that theory, you know? It's almost like it has to, the only fixed number that you know is the length of the whole second floor. And then I would think you could go up to
I'm just
50%
using,
of
yeah.
that, and you could move that little part around, but there's no way you can really get to 50 if you say. it's
Well, if you're
25,
using
it's
it
50, you
immediately
have
below,
to-
you'll never really get to that.
I know, like, that's what I'm saying, it doesn't seem like it's logical.
But
And I
if it
guess-
ju- if it just said workable, immediately below the square footage of that second floor, then it goes away. Cause you get the whole second floor. Versus what they built on top of.
And that's what you did. You took the whole second floor square footage and gave them half.
Yeah, I don't see how you can argue it the other way.
See, I read it. It seems to me like, well, can I say this?
Sure.
Can we, or I support your interpretation, like, obviously it's ambiguous, so maybe. But could we also as a commission take up a clarification of the definition for whatever we think it should actually be?
So what I'm doing is I'm coming to you saying, this is how I've been
Right, and
interpreted.
so I'm saying like.
No one's died,
Right.
but
so-
at the same
right.
time,
It's not-
how am I interpreting it the way you think it should be? And it's probably more than a one night conversation.
I think the discussion here.
Right.
Are interpreting it correctly.
But if I
Yeah.
If I
interpret,
look at that, if I look at that, it's
Because how would you
better.
ever
But then
get
I
to
think-
50
Then I think there's a secondary
Legal, yeah.
question of, do we want it to stay that?
so I think this is, I mean,
This would go under.
I
this
don't-
is the first time it's come up. I think Bob came up with another situation as to why. Maybe we can invite him in to explain it.
Cause I,
But-
Take a look
cause I
at,
think I think you could end up with something that we don't necessarily want. I think it points out that we could end up, the way it's currently written and interpreted, it could end up with something that we don't necessarily,
Well,
we didn't necessarily.
that, the
intend.
rarity that happened, let's say somebody's building a 10,000 square foot house. And each floor is 5,000, so half of 5,000, 50% of 5,000 is 2,500 square feet. Is that a half story or is that a?
Oh, I didn't think that was the question.
Well, no, but that's
Well,
part of the.
understand the second
it could be,
Right.
it could be the question.
Some of them are simple as the old style widow
Hey,
walk.
and-
My point is that you could design a house under that interpretation that partially has 3 full stories that looks like a 3-story house, and then the back is like, you know,
One flat roof.
right,
Right, you could. So that's
So like
the
if
question.
you wanted if you wanted to like,
But should that roof line
do we
be
want to allow?
down
that?
to have that, you know what I'm saying? Do you wanna have it look more kind of like that traditional look where you have more of a roof and it's not that kind of window, third story look? Does that
Right.
kind of make,
Well, let's face it, the only reason that someone would want a half story that's important to them is that they're living in an area where they have a view of something. Whether it's, I mean,
Warm and
water
Well, but,
typically,
yeah.
okay, or something else, all right? And
but it
the
could be
river.
your home office and you wanna have a view of 95, you just wanna look out the window. I mean, it depends,
People like to maximize the
I think,
square
I
footage.
think you've been consistent with your interpretation of the current regulation. And that from what I'm hearing, at least, and speak up if it isn't, this commission is in support of that interpretation
Hmm.
that you give.
You look at that picture, look at that picture there, it's a little more clear.
From the side, yeah.
Yeah, but there, it's clear.
The
50% of the whole other floor isn't really, it's what kind of what it says.
But they could, but what I'm saying is, I agree with what Mark just said, but what I'm saying is. Moving forward, like they could make an almost flat roof on that half story. And then and it could be. That 25 square feet or that 50 square feet of the 100. That essentially functions and looks like a full third story. And my read of the regulation is that maybe that wasn't what the commission at the time wanted to do, even if, so maybe we need to adjust the language. That's,
Well, I think we all just, if we spend time thinking through what we've talked about tonight, and we continue the discussion down the road as to what we should or shouldn't do. One of the other things that could pop up is like on that, where you have the half story and the roof coming out the back or the side, whatever it is flat, you have additional living space, outdoor space.
you can't, cause you can't have
No, but that's been attempted.
right.
You can't have one.
So you can't have a balcony or, I just put the regulation back. You can't have a balcony off of a half story or a porch.
Huh.
If you read it, what is this?
exterior
There's
doors, balconies and decks
Right.
are
Right.
prohibited. On or above the 1/2 story, okay. That's so people.
They did what you said, it really looks so silly. Especially since they can't use it for a deck.
Well, I mean, you don't have to come up with the answer tonight,
that's-
but think about it, because what could potentially, and I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but say this situation goes through and someone appeals my interpretation, I'm gonna go to the ZBA. And I'll tell you, at least one member questions the interpretation.
Right.
So you know what I'm saying? So then I'm a little bit on a losing side of a battle, so
But
it's.
your interpretation is supported by the commission.
Mhm.
It's not, you're not freestyling on your interpretation.
Right, no, I know.
Well,
Thank you, I appreciate it.
That's important.
But I mean, sometimes it, you know, and there's been times over the years, I said, is this what this means? And the commission goes, no, that's not what we meant when we wrote it. And I go, oh, okay, noted, I'll, you know. Interpret your regulations the way you want them interpreted.
Is
But
it,
this is,
Well, that interpretation by the particular member of that commission. If you go back a few years ago. He interpreted it. What was presented was correct, but he interpreted it different and it led to a denial.
got it. So keep doing what I'm doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just need that plan back for the file.
No.
Oh, sorry, that was,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, no, I think that was
What do we have for our next meeting?
our next meeting. We have, Walmart returning. Safe Harbor. Marina is tearing down buildings and making some improvements for a new one, and we have drive-through cannabis regulation.
So Safe Harbor is again on Ferry, the one on.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, it was the one that,
No, the-
Oakley.
Oh, yeah,
Oakley, yeah.
but that's fair, to me, that's fair.
Well, it's all there in the Oakland area, but it's. Safe
It's-
Harbor's by Oakley, and
Right.
it's the two buildings on their property. I think they're in front of ARB next week.
yes, Monday
Yeah,
there.
that's the only Safe Harbors in Saybrook, right?
No, there's another one around, right around the corner.
Okay.
Um,
My husband works at Safe Harbors, should I recuse myself? No, I mean, he has nothing to do with what they're
do
doing.
you have any, does he have any direct impact on this particular?
No, he works on the boats. and
No, you can, you can
Okay,
state for the record that your husband do that you have no issue.
'cause I know Josh Bagnetti, I know
Yeah.
guys he works with, but
Yeah,
he doesn't,
you feel comfortable, you can make a
Yeah.
statement, and that's all.
Okay.
And then, you know, you
Mhm.
can handle it. I don't see it in.
As long as you just stated for the
Yeah,
record.
just state it for a record.
I think legally it's only a conflict if you stand to have a financial.
Right, right.
And then, yeah, and then you
Right.
just say it, so, you know.
And then those, if there was a situation like that, you just don't even
Or
come
if
into
you
the
thought
meeting.
someone was gonna look at it and say, oh, his wife was on the commission, that's why they got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that, so sometimes it's the, you know, if there's an appearance of a conflict, sometimes it's better just to recuse yourself, but it's really up to you, but I would state it definitely for the record.
Right, he does boat repairs, it's not involved in infrastructure.
anything else, Chris?
No, that's it. Sorry for my,
No, that was good. Anything else?
my drawing skills.
John, did you have something?
So,
Joanne, you're gonna republish the, agenda, the zoning meeting agenda for, as
So tomorrow we'll check,
soon as we decide? Okay.
Sarah, yes, so we talked
Well,
about
it
it.
will be the same, just 6 o'clock,
6 o'clock.
starting.
Well, no, we have to publish it with the town clerk, we have to change all the Zoom time, it's not the town calendars and that, so.
I just wanna make sure I get it straight, so.
So yeah, the same dates except starting the second meeting in February. it'll
We'll
be
let you know when you
6.
get back from Aruba, what time to show up.
could we talk about duplexes at some point?
So I think we definitely can. But I think overall, it goes into a bigger housing situation.
Okay.
So right now, we've got the planning commission is acting as the housing task force. We had our affordable housing plan, which we decided we're gonna call the housing plan. They were working on the next step. The most recent bill that went through kind of put us in a little bit of turmoil because we were gung ho to start revising the plan and working on our action items, which we're still ready to do, but the problem is that now it's given us some of the authority to the regions, so is that the regions are writing housing plans. So do we want to do our own independent housing plan or have a regional housing plan, which may duplicate, but our region also includes areas that are larger than us? So because the law is so new, part of it is really kind of the region has to, everyone needs to wrap their heads around what this means. And there's issues already that are coming up in the new law. So it says, there's some text in it, it says, this applies if you have 16, less than 16 units. Then it says, this applies if you have more than 16 units. If you have, so just like anything new,
That's the goal.
there's, so as everybody kind of dissects this whole law and tries to figure out what it means and who's doing what. We need to work on that, but we definitely need to go back and, you know, and look at it all. So our housing task force and part of what we've been doing, there were some goals and actions, and those goals and actions had to do with accessory apartments, revisiting, seeing if there were more incentives for that, kind of doing what we did tonight, except the applicant was in more of a rush, I guess, than we were at the time. Or the Other thing was revisiting the mixed use regulations on Main Street. And that's why we have this $100,000 study going on for looking at soils and also parking to do an analysis of what's going on. And we've been talking to some of the property owners and getting some feedback there. So that's in its kind of beginning stages. In addition to that, we also opted into what's called CMDA, the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority plan. And we're one of the 15 towns that was selected to get funding also to kind of research the Main Street area. And I know the two-family part is a good part, but we've been very successful with getting some free money to focus on Main Street. So if we can work on that now and see what's gonna come out of that and then start looking at some of the other stuff.
My other suggestion is to go back and look at the town plan and see if we're. I haven't looked at it for like 3 years, but I remember that they had certain things they wanted the zoning commission to do. And how are we doing there? And then maybe we can take a look at that.
The town plan, I mean, look at it, go ahead and, but I think we're kind of with the housing portion of it. Is we have the 10-year plan of conservation and development for the town. We have action items in the housing plan, which the planning commission is focusing kind of all on that and the housing push. And I think the hope was I think we know, or you know where you're going for the most part. Some of you have been on the commission, kind of where the zoning commission was going, but I think overall, you're also gonna get some discussions and meeting with the planning commission and the housing task force and what they've been doing for the past year to kind of funnel it in to try to funnel the energy towards housing. Does that make sense? Is it just so late and getting deliveries?
For Main Street, how is that being looked at? Is it like a parking study and a soils analysis through? Or is
So we get $100,000 grant, no match from the Department of Housing. That grant is to take existing information from health departments, all of our records, wherever else, and it's going through Jacobson's office, who is taking what it is to find sites that are somewhat suitable, soils related. We're not going knocking on doors saying, hi, can we soil test? But we have a general feeling from what we've gotten for the years from different properties doing septics and so forth. Then for the parking analysis, we took everything we had upstairs, we scanned that, we sent it to our consultant. So it's WSP. They're the ones who did the Thrive program, our project. And part of going with them is there was a little bit of a time crunch to get the grant in, but there was some overlap because they did the regional plan, which dealt with the train station and so forth. And they worked with Jacobson to do Jacobson's our town engineer to do the soils analysis. So versus starting someone from scratch, it made sense to get us off and running with them. And we got the grant very quickly. And so what I was talking about before is we did have someone go out, their firm went out to do parking analysis. I believe I sent everybody the full scope of that, and then they're gonna look at the regulations and really look at feasibility of it. But now the other thing with the new law that passed, that's also gonna impact parking for housing. So even with some of these regulation changes, it's like you kind of start doing something, we say, okay, we're going here, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Now the law changed, coastal site plan, that was when we started making changes to that. It's pretty much there, so the thought was just to get everything all together in one batch and say, okay, this is how we've addressed the coastal site plan. We have some issues just with the gateway regulations relating to trees. We talked about it at one point. We have to go through and I have all the text ready just to kind of get some of your terms together between nursing home and convalescent home and, you know, what's the right term? You know, do we still want to use sanitarium? getting some of that. I mean, you know, and things change all the time. So that was another potential amendment. I think I said the coastal site plan. Then there were things that we talked about. We wanted to put a cap on like the definition of pergola. How big is a pergola? There was something with shopping centers. So
I'd
I,
like to reduce the amount of parking.
Hmm?
The parking requirement, I think, is excessive.
well, the new law changed all that. So the thing is, that's what we need to kind of take a look at. We can go and make these changes and what, but we have to make sure they're gonna correspond with all these new laws.
So is WSP gonna do an overall analysis of our mixed use regulation for Main Street and then
They're gonna
come to
look at-
us with like some,
They're gonna come
Recommended
back to
changes.
planning and zoning and they're gonna do public outreach. So we're pretty much, we applied in August. We received the money in October, I think it was, and we're pretty much through the first kind of phase of it right now. So it's pretty new. I was actually looking, because I have to do the reporting for the grant. 3 months, 4 months goes by. And,
Sorry. I thought you were done.
And then all of that will kind of get put together and we'll get those findings. That CMDA money is one of the towns, the other thing, the other towns involved are doing something kind of similar, but because we have something in progress, we have to go through and it would overlap with what we're doing here. So it's kind of a lot of moving parts, but it's moving.
Yeah, thanks. So we'll still have a workshop for the discussion on possible amendment change or regulation changes or amendment.
I was hoping to have you text that went through, so like I'll draft text, it'll go to the attorney or you'll come up with an idea, but sometimes the fire marshal needs to look at it. This one regulation with trees in the gateway, I've had the 2 members of the Gateway Commission come in, our representatives, Kathy Connolly's come in, you know, the folks who, before we start discussing a regulation and it's, what we've typically done in the past is rather than say, okay, here's our petition for accessory apartments mixed use. Or this petition to remove the 12.5, and then the next month go through, we just typically just do one big dump of everything, so. I definitely have text for you, it's just in different phases. And laws have changed and things need to be reviewed and we have new staff members and.
And we'll have an opportunity to put in ideas as well.
Well, I mean, if you have ideas now,
Make it each one.
yeah, I mean, that's.
do we typically workshop the proposed regulations?
So
Public hearing.
what we do, I'm obvious, so for the new members, if we have a public hearing, so like tonight, so you have to act. We can keep our public hearing open for 2 years. There's no deadline for us to close a public hearing on our own. But we do have the workshop. And then what I do is I try to keep things together. We say, oh, you know what? This is a problem. And I mean, Laura's seen this, you've seen this. We go through it and then I kind of write down this list of, oh yeah, and we wanted to change this and wanted to change and just do it all in one kind of, we call it housekeeping.
Yeah.
Someone labeled it at one point. But the housekeeping keeps increasing, changing. So yeah, we'll get text, you can review the text in advance. We workshop, it doesn't go right to hearing and we just take our time going through it. It's not something that,
Nothing we rush through.
yeah. I mean, unless it's something like critical, like
Well, yeah, but that's rare.
something we end up in a moratorium or something,
Yeah.
but that's.
Do we ever end up doing overhaul? Like, what if if there's like a whole section where the commission is like, we want to overhaul this section, or like, look at this whole, or like, get something more substantive? How does that usually happen?
So we've gone through at one point, we went through all our business uses, all our residential uses in 2009, we've reformatted. All the regulations to put them into the design standards. We add new sections as things come up and they're out of date. So some towns, what they do is they say, okay, you know, now we're gonna start from page 1. We just work on it
Section.
all the time, and then we say, oh, well. Gee, we don't call those condos anymore, we call them PRDs, or gee, the accessory apartment, so it's not like. It's more like a living document than something we say, let's go through and. Review it because it's time to review it, we haven't looked at it in 20 years, I mean, if you go through the amendment section, you'll see. All the different things that have come up, whether it's accessory apartments and so forth, and we work with our attorney all the time, and, you know, if he sees something, we like, yeah, we gotta fix this. Is that? But,
If that's, to adjourn, covers everything, this motion to adjourn by Mr. Kennedy, seconded by Mr. John, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, thank you very much, everyone.